Hey, shalom, everyone. Great to have you here for another virtual Midrash. We are in Acharei after the death of. So we're looking at Leviticus 16 through 18. Before we get started, I would just like to ask you to keep a member from our church, the Way Congregation, in prayer. He lost his wife yesterday. I won't go into details, but just keep him in prayer. So it's sad that she passed. So thank you for praying for that. All right, let's move on. So this is really, it's all exciting, right? There's great stuff in here. So let's jump right in. I think we're going to have a lot of fun in this particular text. So here we go. So now the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron when they offered profane fire, which is Esarah, before the Lord and died. And the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron, your brother, not to come at just any time into the holy place inside the veil before the mercy seat, which is on the ark, lest he die. For I will appear in the cloud above the mercy seat." All right, so the first thing here, guys, look, God's manifestation, his presence, what's later called the Shekhinah, right? The Shekinah, right? That is what is in the Holy of Holies. It is somehow suspended or whatever, God does over that, the covering of the Ark of the Covenant, sometimes called the mercy seat in some translations. Okay. So God is there, right? And what did God tell Moses? You can't see my face and live. Okay. So in order for a priest to go in there, they first had to be very careful. They had to put on the right garments. They had to do the right sacrifices and procedures in order to be protected, to be covered, so they could go in and minister on behalf of other people, right? Now, what's interesting is that he's saying that, after the death of the two sons of Aaron, you get the impression that maybe the things he's telling Moses and Aaron here is, make sure to do this, because this is what went wrong with Nadav and Abihu, right? That seems to be the impression. Not absolutely, but there seems to be something there. Thus Aaron shall come into the holy place with the blood of a young bull as a sin offering and a ram as a burnt offering. He shall then put on the holy linen tunic and the linen trousers on his body. He shall be girded with a linen sash, and with the linen turban he shall be attired. These are holy garments, therefore he shall wash his body in water and put them on. Again, holy just means that these are set apart garments. Again, just like if you were going into a clean room, you'd put on, those really weird looking white garments so that you don't take in dust, etc. Or you put the little booties on your shoes and stuff, and you put the mask on and the thing over your hair so that you do not corrupt that space. But this is just the opposite here. It's not that you can corrupt God's space, but that God can kind of mess you up if you go in there. So these guys had to go in, and they had to have the covering, which is the blood, over themselves, like a force field, so they can go into God's presence, because God just told us he's in there, right? So you got to be careful if you're going to go in there. And he shall take from the congregation of the children of Israel 2 kids of the goats as a sin offering, right? All right, so this is a really important word, se'irei izim. Interesting, se'irei izim. We're going to see that, all right? So just make a note of this right here, se'irei izim. We're going to come back to that this chapter, next chapter, so hold on to that. And Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. So, right, he said, first prep himself. He shall take the 2 goats. Okay, again, here's the word, ha-se'irim, right? That's very important. And present them before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats. Again, I'm pointing this out. You're going to see why in just a second, okay? But hold on to that, because it gets really interesting. Then Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord, and the other lot for the, look at this word right here, Lazazel. All right, the other one for Azazel. So, okay, wait a second. So there's these 2 goats. One is for God, and the other is for Azazel. What does that mean? Right? So then Aaron shall cast 2 lots for the 2 goats. All right. She'll cast lots for the 2 goats. All right. So he's got his dice or whatever these are, and he's casting lots. One goat, one seir, is going to be for the Lord, for Adonai, and the other one is going to be for who? For Azazel. All right, so this is the big question. And this word Azazel in the Hebrew, it says scapegoat in here. I just want to show you guys in the ESV, it actually says Azazel. All right, so in case you don't believe me, right? But I killed it. All right, so right here we have this word Azazel. So the question is, what does this mean? Now, we looked at the word ez or ezim, right? We go back up here and we see that he says, take 2 kids of the goats, right? Shnei se'irei izim. So the word izim and ez is for goat. It's the same word it's the same root, I should say, as Azazel. All right. Now, we're not entirely sure where, what Azazel means and where it comes from. It's quite likely that it comes from, or it could come from Akkadian, meaning to be angry. That's one possibility. There's another thought that this means the goat of going away or the removal. Another idea. The rabbis later thought that it meant that somewhere in the wilderness was the place of Azazel. But the theory that I think makes the most sense based on the context, based on the original language, based on research of ancient Near East, I would suggest that this is probably a reference to a goat. Okay, so we have in the book of First Enoch, we have a reference to Azazel as a demon, and I think that's the case. Now, I got to be careful here because Enoch certainly, well, in my opinion, I think First Enoch came after the writing of Leviticus. Now, I know that's a little bit contentious, and it's possible that parts of Enoch came before that. It gets complicated. It really does. So maybe parts of Enoch came before, but at least the text that we have, all right, the text that we have from the Second Temple period, written in Greek and Amharic, well, that's certainly a later version. Now, whether something earlier predates that, it's hard to say. Okay, we just don't have the textual evidence for that. All right, so that's one possibility. Another, now I'm just thinking about this as I'm kind of meditating on this whole thing. I did a lot of research in the ancient Near East in this amazing book, Corrupting Image 2, which I encourage you to get, and it's now available as audiobook, so you'll really enjoy it. But there was somebody called the Anzu Bird. Okay, so the Anzu Bird is a reference to Enlil. This was basically his epithet or his logogram, his logo, if you will, his icon, his iconography. So the Anzu bird was a hybridized creature, part lion, part eagle. It had venom coming out of its mouth. It had wings. It had a scorpion's tail, among other things. So very interesting creature. And this was a representative of Enlil or Satan, Halil, in Isaiah 14, verse 12. So that's maybe, I'm just throwing that out there as a linguistic possibility. I'm kind of hypothesizing, okay, at this point. So that's one option. But let's go to the next chapter, because I think that is going to give us a lot of insight as to what this could possibly be. All right. And it's kind of interesting. All right. We'll come back to this, I promise. But I want to really just drive this home so that we can get a sense of what's going on. All right. So the Israelites are to bring the sacrifices to the Lord, not just any place. And part of the reason for that is he says, oh boy, where did it go? It was right there. Okay, there we go. Verse 7. All right, so they shall no more offer sacrifices to demons after whom they have played the harlot. This shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations. All right, now notice the word here. I kept telling you, watch that word. Here's the word, se'irim. All right, se'irim. Now, se'irim, all right, we know what that means, right? That means it's a goat or a young goat. The word actually comes from the word se'ar or se'ara. Se'ara is like hair, okay? Se'ara is one hair, se'ar is hair in general. All right, so basically, there's certain different kinds of sheep, or I mean, not sheep, but goats that are quite hairy, okay? So this is a word, but here it's not talking about goats, but it's talking about demons. Interesting, right? So that's why I think that Azazel is almost certainly a reference to some kind of a goat demon, or a demon that looks like a goat. Now, where would the Israelites have gotten this crazy idea? Well, there was a god of the ancient world who was known as Mendes. Okay, so Mendes is coming from Egypt. All right, Mendes basically becomes Pan. All right, so here's the basic mythology of this whole thing. So Heracles, or Hercules, right? Heracles really wanted to see Zeus, but Zeus said, "No, you can't see me." And so, but Heracles wanted to. And so Zeus came up with a plan, which was that he took a goat, he cut off its head, and he took the head and put it in front of his head, and he put the goat's fleece on his shoulders, and that way Heracles could see him. So, wow, that's pretty weird, right? Well, that's basically the model, the paradigm of where we get the whole Baphomet idea, right? Baphomet, that kind of one hand up, one hand down, androgynous goat demon idea, which is a picture of Satan, if you will. Okay, so this is probably coming from Egypt, right? And of course, God says, you shall not worship these gods that you've been worshiping before. Where do they just come from? Well, from Egypt, right? So this is probably where that comes from. Now, wait, the plot thickens. I want to take you and show you a map, because it's that's kind of cool. So let me show you this. This is the land of Bashan. Okay, so I hope everybody can see that. I think you can. Yes, you can. Let's see if I can make that a little bigger. I'll try. All right, so here is this whole area is Bashan. Okay, this is, of course, the Sea of Galilee. Right up here is what? This is Mount Hermon. Okay, Mount Hermon. What's at the base of Mount Hermon? You guessed it, the Cave of Pan, right? Or also known as the Gates of Hades, right? Is at the base of Mount Hermon. Now, according to the book of Enoch, where did the 200 angels come down in the days of Noah? You guessed it, Mount Hermon. Okay. Here's another question. Pop quiz for you. Where did Jesus take his disciples and say the gates of Hades? Well, you got it. Caesarea Philippi, which is the gates of Hades, or the Cave of Pan. And then 6 days later, where did he take Peter, James, and John? That's right, to the top of Mount Hermon. Okay, it's all starting to come together, right? And also this whole area known as the land of Bashan, or Basan, but it's Bashan. All right, so Bashan in Akkadian is the word Bashmu, which is a dragon snake or a snake dragon. And that was yet another symbol for, or epithet for, Satan or Enlil, right? So all roads are converging here. So this whole area, also this area as well, and really this whole thing is the area of Bashan. Now, Og was the king of Bashan, right? So Og, and I discussed this in this book right here, Encrypt the Image 2, that Og's name basically meant death, and it's related to the word Gog, which means death. Okay, so wow, which is yet another epithet for Satan, Enlil. So, wow, and guess what? According to Ugaritic texts, the this god who dwelt on this god of death, this deified dead king who dwelt on Mount Hermon, where did he have headquarters? At Ashdod and Edrei. All right, so these are the two places. Ashdod and Edrei were the two places, according to the Ugaritic text, which is where this god named King or Molech, right, where he was hanging out. All right, so I mean, it's just amazing how it all comes together to tell us and show us that this whole area, Bashan, the land of the snake dragons, was a land where they were worshiping false gods, and it was basically Satan's headquarters for this area. Of course, he had another headquarters in Babel, no doubt about that. But this was special, right? There was something very special. And on top of Mount Hermon, which again I discussed in Corrupting Image Volume 2. In fact, I can show you. I got a picture here real quick of what this stele looked like. Hopefully, you guys can see that. Let me see if I can do a little better. Okay, yeah. So that's also on my website, douglashamp.com. All right, so that stele right there, that's now currently in the British Museum. That I think that it's somewhere between the 8th century BC to probably about the 3rd century BC. The British Museum thinks it's later than that. I would respectfully disagree with them based on the language that's actually found on it. So it's in Greek, but I was able to decode a word, which is the word batios. The word batios is related to the word bad, which was a secret symbol for Enlil. And guess what it meant? Oh, yes, that's right. It meant death. Okay. So it always meant death, right? So all this stuff, right, just keeps coming together. So this whole area, the land of the snake dragons. And guess what? When Jesus came along, what does it say about him? Well, let's check that out in Matthew chapter 4. How about Matthew chapter 5? There we go. I'm screwing it up. Oh my goodness. This is terrible. Oh man. Oh, I totally botched that. I thought this was the spot, but it's chapter 4. I don't know. It's somewhere in there. Maybe it's chapter 3. I don't know. There we go. All right. So make straight. Anyway, I'll just do the easy thing. I go to Isaiah 9. That's so embarrassing. All right. So anyway, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. Okay, so I'm going to do the little cheat thing. There we go. Matthew 4:16. See, I was close. All right, so here comes Jesus, and it says, the people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and upon those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned. Now, why would it say that? Was it just being dramatic or allegorical? No, this was literally in the shadow of Mount Hermon, which was in the headquarters of Bashan, which was the headquarters of the snake dragons, Satan's headquarters, right? So this whole area is where Jesus came to do battle, right? He did battle. He didn't just come and just do a little bit of teaching and healing people. That was awesome, yes, but he also was on a mission to defeat the enemy. And here's the thing. The enemy, Satan, he swindled Adam and Eve, right? Mostly Adam, okay? Well, yeah, both of them. Anyway, he swindled them. And the dominion that God had given to Adam became forfeit, and it fell into the hands of Satan, all right? So that dominion became Satan's dominion instead of Adam's dominion. So Jesus had to come back. And remember in Revelation chapter 5, John is weeping because there's this scroll that's at the right hand of the Father, and nobody is found worthy, not strong enough, but worthy to open the scroll and to break its seals, right? So he's crying, and an elder comes by and says, don't cry. The Lion of the tribe of Judah is worthy, right? He's able to open it. He looks over and he sees a lamb that's been slain. And it's because he was slain that he's now worthy to open, worthy or authorized to open, to break the seals and open the scroll, which is a way to take back the scroll. Now, what is that scroll? According to the ancient world. Now, again, this is my theory, all right? But if you compare that scroll with the ancient world, there was something called the Tablet of Destinies. This is something that Enlil, Satan, held on to. And according to the mythology, whoever held this, whoever possessed this, had authority over the affairs of men and could dictate destinies, right? So this is what Satan had. And I think it's absolutely true. I think that's what Satan had. When Satan took Jesus to a very high mountain, which is probably Mount Hermon, that's the highest mountain in the region, he said, look, here's all the kingdoms. You can have them. Just bow down and you can have them. Because why? They've been delivered to me and I can give them to whoever I want. And Jesus didn't say, oh, whatever, that's stupid. No, Jesus like, yeah, it's true, right? Basically. But he said, but we're not going to do it that way, right? So Jesus had to, of course, go to the cross to make a way in order to get back the dominion that Adam and Eve had lost. Jesus regained. All right, what does all that have to do with this word Azazel? All right, let's go back to our text because that is absolutely what I am leading up to. All right, so Leviticus 16, where were we? Verse 9. All right, and Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Lord's lot fell. All right, so we go back here again, and Aaron shall cast lots over the two goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for Azazel. So I'm making the case that the Azazel are the demons, these goat demons that they were sacrificing to. We saw that in Leviticus 17:7, right? So that there's one for God and there's one for Azazel. Interesting. Now, why would Azazel get this? Well, here's my thesis, right? You can take it or leave it. But my thesis is that because Satan actually held legally, yeah, he cheated them, yes, but he held legal authority over the planet. Therefore, for God to have sort of his own space on the planet, yeah, God owns it big time, sure, but the lease fell out and it now is leased, it's leased by Satan. So in order to have his space here, he's basically paying a ransom, if you will. He's paying sort of a protexio, right? He's paying the mafia, hey, you got to pay up your protection. From who? From us, Now, again, God is not threatened at all by Satan, but God is always legal, right? God is legal. God is righteous. God is just. And he will do what is required on a legal basis. How do I know that? Why can't he just snap his big fingers and make everything disappear that he doesn't like? Well, Jesus asked him that very question. Father, if there's any way for this cup to pass from me, that right now would be a really good time. But he said, but not as I will, but as you will, right? And so that cup did not pass from Jesus. He had to drink that very bitter cup, and he paid what was necessary in order to purchase back the planet. All right, let's go back to Revelation chapter 5. I want to drive home this point, guys, because I think this is incredibly important, right? So John is weeping. No one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. But one of the others said to me, do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and loose its 7 seals. And I looked and behold, in the midst of the throne and the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, as though it had been slain, having 7 heads and 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. Then he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. Now when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures, the 24 elders, fell down before the Lamb, each having a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song. You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain and have redeemed us. That's to buy back. You've redeemed us to God by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation. Okay. And again, worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. Such a cool thing, right? So, he did all that. And they are, of course, incredibly ecstatic about what Jesus did. Now, in Hebrews, it says, inasmuch then as the children have partaken of flesh and blood, he himself likewise shared in the same, that through death he might destroy him who had the power of death, that is the devil. All right. And release those who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage, right? So who had the power of death? The devil. And as I've been talking about, he's known as death again and again. And Bashmu is one of those epithets, and Bashan is the area of the Bashmu snake dragons, right? And Mount Hermon is that principal mountain. And at the base of that, you had Pan, right? Now, Pan, if you guys are not familiar, but Pan is a satyr, right? This is where it gets even more exciting, right? So Pan is a satyr. He's a half goat, half man combo, right? And he's the epitome of this goat motif. So let's go to Isaiah 13. All right. So in Isaiah 13, it says, but wild beasts of the desert will lie there, and their houses will be full of owls, ostriches will dwell there, and wild goats will caper there. All right. Well, let's take a look at this in the Septuagint, because that's really interesting. So this is the Brenton English version of the Septuagint. It says, but wild beasts shall rest there, and the houses shall be filled with howling, and monsters rest there, and devils shall dance there, and satyrs shall dwell there, and hedgehogs shall make their nests in their houses that will come soon and not tarry. Oh, well, that's interesting, right? Satyrs, right? How very interesting. All right, so right? And notice here the word for satyrs is se'irim, right? And what were they worshiping and making sacrifices to these demons, specifically goat demons, right? So all of it comes together now. We have Bashan, the area of Bashan. Then we have Mount Hermon. That's a more precise location. At the base of the mountain, you have the cave of Pan. Pan is the human goat god, right? This idea is probably coming from Mendes out of Egypt, right? That's probably the origin of that idea, but it could be somewhere else, but that's probably the origin. So, yeah, so this is probably why you have the reference to Azazel. And we have in Revelation 18, he cried with a mighty loud voice, Babylon the great has fallen, has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird, right? So again, there's another reference to the demons in relation to all this whole thing. So I would suggest, based on the literature that I've reviewed, based on my book, Corrupting Image 2, and all the different epithets based on the land of Bashan, and what was happening at Mount Hermon, what was happening at the base, at the cave of Pan, who is that goat god, that Azazel is the goat god, which is just a reference to Satan. Okay, so that still begs the question, well, why did they have to give this to Satan? Well, I would suggest, I already suggested, but basically God is paying the ransom fee. He's paying the user's fee, right? Satan's like, hey, you wanna hang out here? I know you're strong, but still, I have legal authority over this world. Okay. And if you want a place, you got to pay up. And that's what I would suggest. Okay. Now, again, I could be wrong. I'm not opposed to being wrong. I think I'm right, but I'm okay if I'm wrong. Okay. But I think there's a lot of evidence that points us in that direction. Okay. All right. Let's move on. We made it through 8 verses. Let's see if we can get through the rest. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Lord's lot fell and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement upon it and to let it go as a scapegoat into the wilderness. Right. So they'd put their hands on it, right? And then they would send this out into the wilderness. Now, what's interesting about that is that Jesus himself talks about how when a demon comes out of a person, he goes into the desert, into the wilderness, into a dry place, right? So that's probably the same idea. And Satan is occupying this desert or dry place, and probably the sense there. All right. And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall kill the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself. Then he shall take a censer full of burning coals of fire from the altar before the Lord, with his hands full of sweet incense, beaten fine, and bring it inside the veil. And he shall put the incense on the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat that is on the testimony, lest he die. He shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the mercy seat on the east side, and before the mercy seat he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his fingers 7 times. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, bring its blood inside the veil, to do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bull, and sprinkle it on the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. So he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel and because of their transgressions, for all their sins. And so he shall do for the tabernacle of meeting, which remains among them in the midst of their uncleanness. All right. So this is beautiful, right? Notice what he's going to do. He is going to, here the priest is going to take once a year, he's going to make atonement on behalf of the transgressions and the sins and the iniquities of all the people, known and unknown. This is why I love Yom Kippur, right? Because look, I know that I blow it. I know that, I'm human, and I know that I don't get it all right. Do I love the Lord? Yes, I do. Do I want to do it right? Yes, I do. But do I do it right? Well, I try, but I'm frail and human and fail like everybody else. And so there's this one day in the year where all of those are put together, and we take them to the Lord and we confess and say, Lord, I've done all of it, right? It's called the Hashem, right? So the Asham, right? So it's the guilt. We talk about this, right? Ashamnu. We are guilty, right? Ashamnu. We keep saying this, that we're guilty, and we're just like, you know what? We're just fessing up, Lord. It's true. We didn't really mean to do these things. Sometimes we did, but generally we didn't typically mean to. But we know that we're guilty. Guilty as charged. And so we're just confessing all these things, laying them out there before the Lord. And of course, we're not looking to the blood of a bull or goat, but we're looking to the blood of the Most High, who took his own blood once, doesn't have to be repeated. Just one time, he took his blood to not the earthly altar, but to the heavenly altar that is the one made without hands, right? Not of this creation. And he offered his own blood there. Beautiful. There shall be no man in the tabernacle of meeting when he goes in to make atonement in the holy place until he comes out, that he may make atonement for himself, for his household, and for all the assembly of Israel. And he shall go out to the altar that is before the Lord and make atonement for it, and shall take some of the blood of the bull and some of the blood of the goat and put on the horns of the altar all around. Then he shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times, cleanse it and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. And when he has made an end of atoning for the holy place, the tabernacle of meeting, and the altar, he shall bring the live goat. Aaron shall lay his hands, both hands, on the head of the live goat, confess over all the iniquities of children of Israel, and all their transgressions concerning all their sins, putting them on the head of the goat, and shall send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a suitable man. Right? So the goat shall bear on itself all their iniquities to an uninhabited land, and he shall release the goat in the wilderness. Now, basically, as time went on, they would send this guy out there and they would ask him to make sure that the goat didn't come back, right? So they would kind of push it over a cliff or something like that. That was the basic idea, because he didn't want this thing coming back and bringing all that sin back with it, right? So they wanted it to go away and not come back, right? So that's the whole idea. And remember, when we accept Yeshua, what we're doing is we're in a sense symbolically putting our hands on him. When we say, Lord, I accept your sacrifice, of course we can't touch him, but we can still direct our sin toward him and understand that he's going to bear that. He's going to carry it for us. And you know what's so beautiful Oh, I love it. What is so amazing is in Exodus 34, blow you away, guys. Look, and the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long suffering and abounding in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. Who takes care of our iniquity, transgression, and sin? God does. And what's the word for forgive? Ooh, you're going to like this. No say. Okay. Not as in Spanish, no say, like I don't know, but as in Hebrew, no say, which is carry. Okay. So this this word to carry, it also means to forgive. And where else do we see this? Glad you asked. Isaiah 53, verse 10, I believe it is. Maybe it's verse 12. Okay, verse 12. And he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. The word here, nasa, no say, same word, right? They're both the same. Isn't that just incredible? I mean, wow. That's pretty cool, right? That is seriously cool stuff. So God is the one who takes away our sin. He's the one who carries it, right? An animal, this wasn't like they didn't have to get rid of it from God's perspective. I think they were putting it on this animal, sending it out. And I think that goat was for Azazel. That was like, he's like, hey, you got to pay me something, right? And I want it to be dirty. I want it to be unclean. So they're doing this, right? And I'm thinking this is the bargain that God may have struck up with Satan. Now, only for a time, right? Just a limited time until the Savior would come and he would purchase back. He wouldn't have to just pay the ransom. Wouldn't have to just pay, well, I should say, he would have to just pay the yearly mafia fee. But he did it at the fullness of time, right? There's all this backstory to what's going on and what happened at the cross, right? Oh, I can't go and not tell you about this really cool passage. Okay, so yeah, let's go to Psalm 68. Psalm 68. This is really awesome. Okay, why a mountain of God is a mountain of Bashan, right? Well, there's that word. A mountain of many peaks is the mountain of Bashan. What mountain is that? Mount Hermon. Where is it? In the land of Bashan, right? Why do you fume with envy, you mountains of many peaks? This is the mountain which God desires to dwell in. Yes, the Lord will dwell in it forever. The chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands of thousands. The Lord is among them as in Sinai in the holy place. All right, I could say more there. I'm going to stop for now in that passage. Now I'm going to go to Psalm 22. You all know this passage because it's an amazing passage. So Psalm 22:12, it says, many bulls have surrounded me. Strong bulls of Bashan have encircled me. They gape at me with their mouths like a raging and roaring lion. Okay, now we've looked at all this before, and he says, I'm poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd. I mean, all this happened to Jesus when he was on the cross. But what about the whole bulls of Bashan thing? I don't remember that happening. Well, what David is giving us here is a window into the spiritual realm to tell us that the bulls of Bashan, first of all, this word here, strong bulls of Bashan, is the word abirim or abire Bashan. So the word abirim is it's a god, but it's a bull god. Okay, so it's not just your average cow. Okay, not your average cow, but this is a god who is a bull, right? So they go together. And we know another epithet for Zeus, right? Which we've talked about Zeus before, was that he later shows up as the bull that carries away Europa. Remember that? So he does that, and of course, he's often known as a bull throughout the ancient Near East. So here's another thing. So Abirei Bashan, these are the strong god bulls of Bashan, the snake dragon land. And what were they doing? They were going around Jesus. You couldn't see it with your eyes, but in the spirit, this was happening. And they were gaping at him like raging and roaring lions. They were waiting for Jesus to die because they thought they were winning. Turns out they lost. But this is how it all comes together. And Jesus had to buy this back. He had to purchase back planet Earth and us from the clutches of Satan. And I'm so glad he did. I mean, wow. So glad he did. Okay, back to our main text here. Sorry, all these rabbit trails are so fun. Okay, so the goat shall bear on itself all their iniquities to an uninhabited land. He shall release the goat in the wilderness. Then Aaron shall come into the tabernacle meeting and take off the linen garments, which he put on when he went into the holy place, and shall leave them there. And he shall wash his body in water with a holy place, in a holy place. Put on his garments, come out and offer his burnt offering and the burnt offering of the people, and make atonement for himself and for the people. The fat of the sin offering he shall burn on the altar. And he who released the goat as a scapegoat shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water. And afterward he may come into the camp. The bull of the sin offering and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the holy place, shall be carried outside the camp, and they shall burn in the fire their skins, their flesh, and their offal. Then he who burns them shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. This shall be a statute forever for you. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls, and do no work at all, whether a native of your own country or a stranger who dwells among you. This is another reason that we are to do this. I think it's really a shame that the church at large has stopped keeping the feast of the Lord. Now, I get it. We can't do the animal sacrifices. But if you understand, the book of Hebrews talks about this, right? Like it says, look, we're not doing this Yom Kippur thing with the blood of bulls and goats. No. We have a greater high priest who doesn't need to make intercession for himself. And he's not taking the blood of bulls and goats, but his own blood. And he's not going into the earthly tabernacle and the earthly altar, but he's going into the heavenly tabernacle and to the heavenly altar, and he's offering his blood on that. And he's not doing it year after year, but he's doing it once and only once for all the sins, right? So the book of Hebrews is telling us that Jesus fulfilled, has fulfilled and continues to fulfill, not that he has to do it again, but the one sacrifice fulfills forever the requirement of Yom Kippur, right? So we don't get out, chickens or lambs or anything like that when we do Yom Kippur. I mean, that'd be silly, right? We have Yeshua. His sacrifice is 100% good. And so, what we do is this is an amazing opportunity to remember what the Lord has done for us. And that's why we celebrate it, right? One, God told us to keep these things. And two, there's all these other amazing reasons that we should do it, right? All right. For on that day, the priest shall make atonement for you to cleanse you, that you may be clean from all your sins before the Lord. It's a Sabbath of solemn rest for you, and you shall afflict your souls. It's a statute forever. So look, I definitely fast on that day. It's only 24, 25 hours. I mean, it's not that bad. It really isn't. If you have a decent meal before and then you break the fast after it, it's not that hard. So I really encourage everybody, if you have not fasted for Yom Kippur, I encourage you to do it. It'll be here before you know it. And the day goes fast. Take the day off. Okay. This is a day God said this is a solemn rest for you. So don't work that day and just meditate on what the Lord has done for you, right? Just be in prayer. You don't have to be sitting there on your knees and, oh Lord, maybe go for a walk and just thank God. Thank you, Lord, that you took my sin, and kind of meditate on your sin, like the things that you did, right? And that's what we do on Kol Nidre. That's the evening of Yom Kippur. It's a really beautiful time. So I encourage you guys, if you can, come join us at the Way Congregation. That'll be happening in October, something. I haven't looked at the exact date, but it's sometime in October when that's going to happen. All right. And the priest who is anointed and consecrated to minister as priest in his father's place shall make atonement and put on the linen clothes, the holy garment. And then he shall make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make atonement for the tabernacle meeting and for the altar. And he shall make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the assembly. This shall be an everlasting statute for you to make atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did as the Lord commanded Moses. All right. Chapter 17. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron, to his sons, and to all the children of Israel, and speak and say to them, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded, saying, Whatever man of the house of Israel who kills an ox or lamb or goat in the camp, or who kills it outside the camp and does not bring it to the door of the tabernacle of meeting to offer an offering to the Lord, the guilt of bloodshed shall be imputed to that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. To the end that the children of Israel may bring their sacrifices, which they offer in the open field, that they may bring them to the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, to the priests, and offer them as peace offerings to the Lord. And the priest shall sprinkle the blood on the altar of the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and burn the fat for sweet aroma to the Lord. They shall no more offer their sacrifices to demons. All right, so we went into that. I won't go back over that again. After whom they have played the harlot, this shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations. Also you shall say to them, whatever man of the house of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you, who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice, and does not bring it to the door of the tabernacle meeting to offer to the Lord, that man should be cut off from among his people. So look, what God doesn't want is just sacrifices happening willy-nilly here and there, anywhere, because that's not going to work, right? The whole point is that it needs to be centralized. It needs to be under the care and jurisdiction of the Levites, because they're the ones in this particular structure called the tabernacle, later called the temple, of where this is supposed to happen. It's not just supposed to happen anywhere, but there. And of course, God is going to name that place, which will be, of course, Jerusalem, right? So this is what they're supposed to do. So whatever man of the house of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among them who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and I will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no one among you shall eat blood, nor shall any stranger who dwells among you eat blood. Whatever man of the children of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you, who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. For it is the life of all flesh, its blood sustains its life. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is in its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. And every person who eats what died naturally or was torn by beasts, whether he was a native of your country or a stranger, he shall both wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Then he shall be clean. But if he does not wash them or bathe his body, then he shall bear his guilt. All right, so God is really serious about not eating blood. Now, here's the crazy thing, right? We go back to Acts chapter 15. So Acts chapter 15, let me pull up a different thing here. All right, so Acts 15, and, what are the Gentiles supposed to do? Well, they don't have to take on all of Torah right away, but there's four basic things that they need to do. They need to abstain from things polluted by idols, right? We just got over talking about don't worship demons, right? Right there, huge. Sexual immorality, that goes very closely with that. And from things strangled and from blood. It's crazy. I was having this discussion with a group of pastors some years ago, and I think I had read about somebody eating blood pudding, and it just grossed me out, right? And I was like, oh, that's just nasty, like, why would anybody eat blood? And besides, we're not even supposed to. As Christians, we're not supposed to eat blood. And this pastor, he turned and looked at me, and he's like, we are free to do anything in Christ. And I'm like, well, what about Acts 15? He says that was a transitional period, and that does not apply to today. Well, I strongly disagreed with that man, and I still disagree with that man on this point, because God clearly says, the disciples talking to the Gentiles, keep it easy, guys. And they're saying, look, here's four basic things you need to do to get started. Don't get into idolatry. Go away from that. Go away from sexual immorality, which is the word porne, which is actually prostitution. Get away from that. That was happening in Rome all the time. From things strangled and from blood, right? Because God's like, don't eat blood. Don't do that. So I don't know how that pastor could say that. Still baffles me to this day. But he's not alone. There's a lot of people, a lot of Christians that think, well, none of this stuff applies. But yes, it does. Eating blood is not what we're supposed to be doing. So now, why? I mean, what's up with this? So again, in Corrupt the Image 2, what I suggest, and I just want to let you guys know, if you can't afford the book, I will send you the ebook. So just let me know, and I'm happy to send it to you. So don't let money keep you from reading this book. I just want you to read it, because I think you're going to love it. It answers a lot of questions. When I was doing the research, it answered a lot of my questions, right? So Please read the book. Anyway, what I suggest in the book is that when Adam and Eve died, when they got disconnected from God, the source of life, then they had to start eating, right? They had to sustain their bodies. How could they do that? They could do it through something of a like nature. Where did Adam come from? From the Adamah. Adam is from the Adamah, right? Adam is from the earth. So they're able to eat things from the earth to sustain and give energy to their bodies. Now, Satan and his crew, they're not from the earth, right? They are a spirit in nature. So they need something that is of a spiritual nature. Well, the blood is that thing that gives us, it's a spiritual nature. And that's why the blood can be used for atonement or for covering. It can cover the worshiper, right? And it can provide that necessary covering. So in God's economy, the blood is important because it provides a covering. It provides a force field, a shield, so that people don't get burned when they're in God's presence. And I mean that quite literally. It's like Nadav and Abihu, right? But from Satan's perspective, he wants his worshipers to bring blood, not for an atonement, but so that it will feed the gods. And if you go to India today, it's crazy. They're still doing this. They are still feeding the gods, right? They'll bring them chiquita bananas, or they'll bring them fruit, or whatever it may be, right? And I don't know if Satan and company really likes that stuff, but what they really like is blood. And I don't want to gross people out because there's some unfortunate stuff happening, but if you start poking just a little bit into Satanism, you discover that, yes, they like blood. So I think that's probably self-evident. Okay, so let's go back here. So we got through this chapter, and we're cruising now, aren't we? All right. And then we get to Leviticus 18. Now, Leviticus 18 is all about illicit sexual unions. All right. So if you're looking in the New Testament as to what does God consider an illicit sexual union, you come back to Leviticus 18 and it tells you. And he pretty much has, it's, pretty much anybody you're related to, men with men, women with women, and men or women with beasts. All right. So that's it in a nutshell. All right. And what he says is don't do this because this is what people are doing in the land that, I just booted them. Don't you do that too. All right. So the Lord spoke to Moses saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, I am the Lord your God. According to the doings of the land of Egypt where you dwelt, you shall not do. And according to the doings of the land of Canaan where I'm bringing you, you shall not do, nor shall you walk in their ordinances. So they were doing all kinds of nasty stuff. Remember, God gave them 400 years from the time he told Abraham until he brought the children of Israel into the land of Canaan, right? You had the Amorites. That's a whole nother story. It's in the book, right? It's in image too. But the god Amuru or Martu, which is Marduk, which is Enlil, they were worshiping this god who was the god of death, right? I mean, there you go, the land of Bashan, all that stuff. So he says, don't do this stuff. He says, you shall observe my judgments, keep my ordinances, and walk in them. I am the Lord your God. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man does, he shall live by them. I am the Lord. All right. So look, if you do these things, what will happen? If you do, you shall live, right? This is an if then. If you do these things that I'm telling you to do, then you will live. Flip it around. If you don't do these things, then you'll die, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you do it and you die the very same day, but it starts to eat away. It's like cavities in your teeth, right? That there's just that sugar gets in there and the bad stuff, and it starts to eat away at your enamel. And before you know it, you got a hole in your tooth, right? So it wasn't just a one-day experience, but it started when you started eating too much candy or sugar, whatever it is. And then just that constant wear and tear, and it wears down the tooth until you have a cavity. And that's the same basic idea. If you don't do the things God says, it's going to start to slowly kill your spirit. It may result in instant death, but probably the process is it's going to be a slower death, but you'll get there, all right? And it may just kill your spirit. You may live long in, physical years, but you're dying a quiet, desperate death, which is not so good. None of you shall approach anyone who is near of kin to uncover his nakedness. I am the Lord. All right. So right here, this is it. The Bible's telling you God is not into any deviant relationships. Okay, it's not that he's okay with relationships, but they need to be someone that you're not related to. That's the basic idea. And he tells you what those relationships look like, right? And then Paul even says, to the Corinthians, he's like, wait a second, you guys are doing stuff that even the Gentiles are embarrassed about, right? And yet you guys are doing these things. And his authority for saying that is not just because God made him an apostle. That's not the authority. The authority is that Scripture already said don't do these things. And the Corinthian church was doing things that were against Torah. They weren't against Paul. They were against Torah. And that's why Paul was bringing that up to them. So he says, the nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother, you shall not uncover. Now, what it means by nakedness in our modern day vernacular, sex. Okay. So don't do that. Okay. Bad, very bad. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife, you shall not uncover. All right. So if your father's wife is not your mother, you cannot have relations with her. That's bad. It's your father's nakedness, right? So his wife is for him, not for you. The nakedness of your sister, the daughter of your father. Okay, so maybe she's not related, or she's not of the same mother, right? Of the same father. You're not to have relations with her. Or your daughter's daughter, their nakedness you shall not uncover, for theirs is your own nakedness. Right? Again, you're close of kin. You cannot do that. The nakedness of your father's wife, begotten by your father, she is your sister. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's sister. She's near of kin, right? That's your aunt. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, your aunt, for she is near of kin to your mother. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother, your uncle. It seems pretty obvious. You shall not approach his wife. She's your aunt. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law, right? So look, your father's brother, so your uncle's wife, well, it's all weird. What God is trying to say, look, there doesn't have to be a direct blood relationship between you and this person, but there's a relational relationship, right? So there's a marriage relationship. What am I trying to say? There we go. And you're not supposed to do that. All right. You shall not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter, nor shall you take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter to uncover her nakedness. They are near kin to her. It is wickedness, right? Don't do that. Nor shall take a woman as a rival to her sister to uncover her nakedness while the other is alive. Now, you might say, wait a second. The whole half-sister thing, didn't Abraham do that? And the whole sister and sister, didn't Jacob do that? Yeah, it's true, right? So in the case of Abraham, well, here's what I would suggest. I mean, if you go back all the way, we go back to Adam and Eve, right? And you pop out, right? And then your sister pops out, right? Well, who else is on the planet? Just the two of you. Well, four of you at this point. Okay. So what options do you have? I guess it's sister, right? So here's the thing. The genetic load was much, much less back then, right? So the amount of degenerate, what's the word? Not cells, but DNA, genes, and all that stuff, right? There were fewer mutations. There were fewer deleterious mutations in our genetic code in the human genome, right? There were just far fewer, right? And so that's why that was okay back then. So the problem is, it's not that, how should I put this gently? Back then it was okay. I guess I'm just trying to say this in a nice way. Back then it was okay because the genetic or the deleterious genetic defect load was minimal. Today it's high. All right. That's why you're not supposed to marry your sister or your first cousin, or probably even your second cousin, right? That's just, it's dangerous territory, because you are more likely to have children who will have birth defects if you do that. And so this has become a big, big no-no, right? Now, early on, so remember that Abraham was only, I don't know, 300-400 years after Noah. So it was still much less back then, but then it quickly became something that was bad. So now we're 400 years after the time of Abraham, and God's like, don't do that. And if you want to see, did it work out really well with having two sisters as wives? Nope, it sure didn't. It worked out really badly for Jacob, and he wasn't that happy about it. So God's saying, don't do that, by the way, right? So remember, the Bible has all the dirty laundry, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's all in there. All right, so moreover, you shall not lie carnally with your neighbor's wife to defile yourself with her, and you shall not let any of your descendants pass through the fire to Molech. Look, Molech is the same as the goat demon or the god of Bashan or Satan, right? They're all one and the same dude, right? Or at least they're all working for the same guy, even if they're not the same exact demon, but they're all working for the same demon. Nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It's an abomination. Now, I firmly 100% agree that it's an abomination. I just want to point out that there's a few other things that are abominations, like a haughty look and sowing seeds of discord, right? We as Christians have a tendency to point our finger at homosexuality and say, that's wrong, that's an abomination. And it is, okay? But then we really forget about, being haughty and prideful and having a lying tongue and hands that shed blood and all this other stuff. We're like, well, that's different. So all I'm saying is homosexuality is wrong, but so is pride, okay? So you may not be dealing with this one. It may not be the slightest temptation for you. Great. But pride, chances are it probably is, because that's something a lot of us often struggle with. So I'm just saying, be slow to cast stones at people, right? When there's a plank in your own eye, just be careful. Nor shall you mate with any animal to defile yourself with it, nor shall any woman stand before any animal to mate with it. It's a perversion. I think that's self-obvious, but self-evident, but I don't know, maybe not. Do not defile yourselves with any of these things, for by all these things the nations are defiled, which I am casting out before you, right? So God's like, look, the nations I'm casting out have been doing this stuff. Don't you do it. Because guess what? I'm casting them out, and if you do it, I'll cast you out. And guess what happened? God cast out Israel. Why? Because they were doing these things. That's why. They got into the worship of Molech, Ashtoreth, Baal, all variations on a theme. And they were doing bad, bad stuff. And they were giving their children to pass through the fire to Molech. And guess who brought that in? Yeah, thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, Solomon. Yeah, King Solomon. Yeah, he did that. Bad stuff. For the land is defiled, therefore I visit the punishment of his iniquity upon it, and the land vomits out its inhabitants. And the land vomited out the Israelites because they did these very things. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, either any of your own nation or any stranger who dwells among you. For all these abominations, the men of the land who have done, who were before you, and thus the land is defiled. Lest the land vomit you out also when you defile it, as it vomited out the nations that were before you. So the nation of Israel did this. Now the whole world is going to have this eventually, right? So we see this in Isaiah chapter 26, where it says, for the Lord comes out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth will also disclose her blood and will no more cover her slain. So the earth is not going to take it anymore. We see the same thing in Isaiah 24. I think it's verse 4, somewhere in there. So the land will be emptied, utterly plundered. The earth mourns and fades away. The world languishes and fades away. The haughty people of the earth languish. The earth is also defiled under its inhabitants because they've transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore, the curse has devoured the earth, and those who dwell on it are desolate. Therefore, the inhabitants of the earth are burned. A few men are left. Wow, right? Because the whole world is committing these same kinds of sins, which is a really sad testimony. But here we are. For whoever commits any of these abominations, the person who commits them will be cut off from among their people. Therefore, you should keep my ordinance so that you do not commit any of these abominable customs which were committed before you, and that you do not defile yourselves by them. I am the Lord your God. Wow. Awesome stuff, right? I mean, just amazing, amazing stuff. So that's it. I'm going to put in the chat right now just putting in the chat, I want to let you guys know that I will be on Shabbat Night Live this coming Friday. I'm really excited about that. I'll be talking about Cryptic Image Volume 3, which you're going to love. It's really amazing. So I'll be on for the most of the month of May. So do check that out. Michael Rood, he's a great guy. And I was privileged to go and share the findings of my book. So if you haven't read it yet and you just don't feel like reading it, check it out. Okay. So it's going to be awesome. Thanks again, guys. God bless you. Take care. Good night.